Alright, so last week what we did was we took our 2D concepts for our characters and we used simple primitives in Maya to block out the scale and the proportions and double check that our concepts actually work in a 3D environment. What we need to do this week is establish a skeleton system so that we can actually get animations created and bring our characters to life in Unreal. So first thing we need to do is along the top of Maya, make sure that we're changing the menus in the shelf to rigging so that we can actually access all the correct tools. What we need to do is click on the Create Joints tool and bring up the front view so that we can only see the character from a front-on perspective without any distortion from the camera angle. So, Create Joint tool, I'm pressing 4 to turn on wireframe only. If I draw in an open space, we can see that every time I click, what we create is a new joint. So if I press enter to complete that command, now if I grab any of these spheres and use my rotation tool or movement tools, I can move the skeleton around, but at the moment it's not affecting any geometry. So you might also notice as well that this is where we started at the very top. If I just make it a bit darker, you can see that there's small little arrows pointing down from parent, which is the starting place, to the child. So in this situation you can see this joint at the top is our parent, this is the child, and then this is the parent for the next joint in the chain. And all that means is whenever we do something to the parent, if the child will follow. Right. So let's just delete that. Alright. So create joint tool. What we want to do first is create what's called a master joint. So if we put that at the base of the character's spine and his pelvis, and on the right hand side we're going to just change its name to master joint and press in open space again. Right, so just pick up the create joint tool again. We're selecting that master joint so that we can carry on drawing from it, and we're just going to draw out a joint everywhere that we think motion is going to originate from. So if we was to do this, we're going to go from the top of the thigh to the knee to the ankle, and I'm going to create an extra one between ankle and the back of the foot. I'll explain in a second. Right, so what I've done so far is I've drawn out the skeleton in a simplified form for one of the feet. Press enter to complete it. But we can see that because I've drawn it in perspective, although it looks right in this camera, when we go into 3D view, it's not actually lined up. So if we select the joints one at a time and press insert, you can see that the tool actually updated visually. So that's a normal move. With insert, we can move this joint around without influencing those underneath it. So if I add normal move, everything goes with insert, just the one. So I'm just lining up this joint with roughly where I think the leg needs to rotate from. Doing the same for the knees. I'm just bringing it forward, and the ankle would be at the back-ish. And then now for the foot, I'm doing something which is going to aid the movement. Bear with me. Right. Okay. Alright. So, what would happen if I drew this joint system from the top of the thigh all the way down to the ankle to the foot in just 3 joints, or 4 joints, sorry, without this 5th one? What would happen is when I tried to move the foot, I'd have to either move it from the bottom of the foot. I'll just move this pivot point to the back to show you how the movement would change. Come on. Right. So if I moved the foot from here, it looks okay, but it's not very believable because you can see the top of the foot is essentially breaking off and doing things it just shouldn't. Similarly, if I move the rotation point to that joint, it should look a little bit more believable, but again, the pivot point just isn't quite correct. So if I move it to here, that's about right. It should now be a little bit closer to what we'd actually expect. So when I'm bringing it up, you can see that the heel is actually tucking into its nearest body part. As long as we don't push it beyond normal rotation angles, it looks relatively believable. Alright. Right, so if we grab the thigh at the top of the leg, if we grab the joint at the top of the thigh, what we're going to do is mirror it across. So we go to skeleton and mirror joints. So I've clicked on the options. We want to mirror it across using its orientation so that we know that it's all of its rotation values are pointing in the correct direction, and we haven't got any behaviors scripted into it yet. So if we try X and Y, okay, it's wrong. So it will be a little bit of trial and error because your characters will be facing in different directions to mine. So mine was mirror across Y and Z. And we can see that it's taken the joint I had selected, not the parent, and mirrored it straight across from the same joint. So close that. You should get in good naming habits and continue the fact we named the first joint master joint. So the next one will be left thigh. If we press down key, it will take us to the next joint. Left knee, left ankle, and so on. I'm not going to name them all because I only got so long. Right knee, right thigh, and right ankle. Right. So when we get to the point in the pipeline where we are working with a lot of objects and we need to use the outliner to find things, it will be a lot easier if we can simply flip through the outline and we can clearly see what everything is. That saves you, although it takes a little bit of time now, it does save time in the long term. Right, so we've got the lower half blocked out, so we pick up the create joint tool again. We're going back to front on, selecting the master joint because it's the master joint, it is where everything originates from. So if I hold down shift, I'm drawing out the spine in a straight line. And what I need here is approximately, how many joints do I want? 1, 2, 3. 3 should be fine. If you was going for something more complex, you might need 4, 5, 6 joints in the spine, but for our purposes, 3 should be enough. So I've got a spine going up the back, and again I'm changing to another view, and I'm just lining it all up with roughly where I think rotations are going to take place from. So this would be roughly where the neck is. Alright, so again I'm going to click on that, carry on drawing up. So I draw a joint at the base of the head because this is where I think his head is going to actually pivot from. Yeah, should be right. Then one to the top of his head, one to his nose. There we go. So I've drawn out one to the point of his nose purely because if the mesh was really complex and I'm trying to get animations done quickly and there's too many polygons and it's slowing down my production process, I can simply turn off the geometry layer and I can still see exactly what direction the character's facing and what direction the head's facing as well. Alright. So now we just need the arms. So create joint tool. Here I'm selecting a joint halfway down his chest. I'm using this one instead of the one above because if I use the joint above, what would happen is whenever I rotated the head or the neck, the arms would automatically follow. So it's all about appropriate parenting, and simplify that for now. Alright, so you might notice between the chest and the shoulder, I've added in an extra joint, and this will just give me the ability to separate any movements from the chest and the arms, as well as if I wanted to add in a more advanced feature like being able to shrug his shoulders or anything along those lines. I've got the extra joint there which can clean up or add in more subtle animations. Right, so oops, nearly did bad things. Right, so we're lining up the joints again with a mesh. So bang and bang. Right. Now, when you're drawing your own joints, please make sure you don't draw them out perfectly straight. In this scenario where I've done the arms, you can see that there is a clear bend in the skeleton and the geometry, and this is going to help us further down the line. I'm not going to go into details about it now, but just make sure you've got at least a very small bend in there, where if you drew like an imaginary line from the parent to the third joint along, so A, B, C, if you were to draw a line from A to C, there would be a clear kind of bow to the skeleton. And this would just let Maya know further down the line which direction we actually want that limb to bend in. Right, so arm is done, so it's just a matter of choosing the highest joint in its pecking order and mirroring it again. Skin, skeleton, mirror joints. There we go. Selected the wrong thing. Right. Next. So we've got a skeleton then. It very closely resembles our 3D guy's proportions. We've got joints anywhere that we think there would be mobility. And all we need to do is again name everything. So left shoulder, pressing down key to go down the joint hierarchy. Left elbow, down key again. Left wrist. Right shoulder. Right elbow. Right wrist. Okay. Neck. Head. So, right. Okay. So now, if we was to grab our master joint in the middle of his pelvis and use the move tool, we can see that everything else is following, because as we can see in its outliner, every single joint that we've just created is listed underneath the master joint. If we zoom straight in, all of these arrows that are coming out of, or the cones coming out of this joint, are pointing away from it. So we can clearly see visually and in the list that this is the papa of our joints. Right. So we've got a joint system. It's all beautiful. It's all in the right place. We're happy with it. Next up, select the master joint. We then also select all of our geometry. So I've already grouped my geometry, so it's made skinning it a lot easier, or selecting it. So you should get into the same habits. So both the master joint and the geometry group is selected. I go to skin, bind skin, and we want to bind it by joint hierarchy, closest distance, and max influences is what you'll probably need to change to 1. Now we'll explain it in a second. So just press apply. You can see your entire mesh has just gone purple. And that's just a visual feedback that now if we were to grab your joints and move them around, the mesh now has influences on it. Alright, but as you can see there, when I've grabbed this joint and rotated it up, parts of his other body parts are messing up. They're following joints that they shouldn't. So what we need to do is just clean up how the polygons are assigned to the skeleton. Alright. So if we do this one at a time, starting with the head. Right, so if we grab the head, for example, and go to skin, paint skin weights, skin, paint skin weights, and we select the options, it brings up the tool window, or alternatively you can just double click on it in the toolbar, and what is brought up is, oh, 1 second, it's for some reason not giving me feedback. You turd, come on. Skin, paint skin weights. Why is it doing this? Okay, 1 second. Alright, it seems to be working now. So, all I did was close my reopen it, and if we go to skin, paint skin weights, we've now got the head itself is updated to be black, just black, with a little bit of white underneath. Now, what we're looking at is a black and white representation of how the neck joint down here is influencing the entire head. So anywhere that is pure black isn't going to be affected by that joint in particular. So if we flick through the list of joints which are affecting it within the tool, we can see that whenever I click on a joint, it does actually highlight them quite subtly. I'm not sure you'll be able to see it on the recording, but right. So in this situation, we've got a head joint which I've already anticipated as being the joint which controlled the entire head object. So if I expand this window a little bit and scroll down, I've got, this is the only value I need you to play with. Value. If I was to select 1 and paint or drag my left click mouse over any vertexes, it is adding on a value of 1. Right? And what that means is I want the head joint here to have total control over this. If I was to reduce this value to 5 or 0.5, we get like an in-between tone. So that joint, if I was to move this joint a mile away, the vertexes I've just painted would only move half a mile away. But if I was to give it a full value of 1 and press flood, the entire head goes white, and everything else now has 0 influence on this object. So I can go in, grab this joint, rotate it around, and the only thing that's going to move is the ears, because if I now select the ears and click on paint skin weights, it doesn't work. Okay. Right. Okay, I see. Alright. So if it's not just updating, you need to just make sure that you actually click on a joint in the tool, and it should turn on black and white representation. Yeah, so head joint. We can see that when I grabbed the joint, what joint is it? It's joint 19. It's moving up these vertexes here. So if I grab the object, turn on skin weights, joint 19, we can see that we've got white all over that area. So if we drag the value down to 0, flood it, and we move this joint up and down, it's still moving the other ear, but we can see that this ear that we've just updated is no longer bugging out. So I think in this situation what we'd want is for that ear to actually follow the head. So give it a value of 1, flood it just to make sure it's all okay, and paint the skin weights again. So we just need to update this so the head's got total control again. But when we skinned the character to the skeleton, we inputted a value of max influence is 1. So that means whenever we select a joint, if we put a value of 1 on any vertex, it will automatically subtract all values from every other joint that has an influence on it. So if we look at joint 19 now, we can see it's got values there. But if I put 1 onto the head joint and go back to joint 19, it's all cleaned up. It's automatically only letting the head joint control it. So that is why in the last lesson I asked you to make your blockouts in as many objects as possible, so that it's just simplified the human form or your character's form into its most basic shapes. Because this way we can very quickly scrub through the entire character, flooding objects with a value of 0 or 1. So at the moment I've got the scapula selected, or the shoulder, when in reality we want all of the motion for this upper arm to come from the shoulder. So flood it with 1. The scapula's now got no control, the elbow's got no control. Next object down the line, we want it to be controlled by the elbow, not the wrist. So we flood it 1. Wrist has got no control anymore, and then the hand will be controlled by the wrist. So flood it 1. So where before grabbing this shoulder resulted in half the head moving as well, now when we move it, we can get just the arm moving as we want it to do, and get a little wave going. Alright, super easy. Right. So if we start with the pelvis, so with the pelvis, I'm selecting the object, skin, paint skin weights, double clicking the tool, just select the joint. So the pelvis itself is, in a human being, would be mostly bone. It doesn't really do any deformations. All of the movement is in the legs and the abdomen above it. So we just want to flood the master joint, all control, select the legs, back to paint skin weights. We don't want the master joint to affect anything but that central mass. So we drag it down to 0, flood it, and left thigh, we know we want to control the upper leg. So 1. Then lower half of the leg, we know we want the movement for the lower half of the leg to come from the knee. So we flood that. And we can see nothing else has got control because we've given it a total value of 1. And the foot, as I discussed at the start of the tutorial, we want it to come from this middle joint right there because we've positioned it perfectly for the foot's rotations. But here, damn, I've actually messed that one up. In an ideal world, we should have had this joint further forward, mirroring the ball of the foot, so where you'd bend your toes. This is only a demo, so it doesn't matter too much. What we need to do is put a value of 0.5 in. Oh no, we want a value of 1. Value of 1, and we simply draw it over the middle of the mesh, where we want it to have influence from. Right, there we go. And just fill in all of the black ahead of that. So now when we grab that toe, it's going to look wrong because it's too far back. We've got the ball of the foot. Alright. There are functions such as mirroring skin weights, but they tend to be unreliable. It's not really worth the effort when your mesh is so simple. And that is all you need to achieve in today's session.